Hey, thanks for listening to the Word and Journey podcast, Stories that Shape Us and Make Us Think. I'm Moses Bernabe, delighted to bring you yet another episode. This one, the conclusion of our series reviewing the Amazon Prime show Hunters. Me and Jake Schwartz again. Glad you're here. So this was another one where technology was funny and the internet was funny. So there's some weird looking video lags on the video feed. They won't show up on the audio feed. If you're just listening, you won't notice anything at all. But if you are following us on YouTube, that will look a little bit funny. So apologies for that. We have figured out how to avoid that in the future. So if you stick with us till the next episodes, things will look much smoother. And again, thank you for being here. And again, please do consider if this sort of show, this sort of entertainment, this sort of conversation is valuable for you or at least entertaining. Please consider supporting us at patreon.com/Moses Bernabe. A couple dollars a month helps us get better technology and spend more time knowing how to use it well, and just helps us out all around. So please consider that. Otherwise, thanks for being here and enjoy the show.
It was a good episode. It was fun. It was different. It was, it was really cool to see like this person that we've heard about on occasion kind of finally comes in. I wish that he would have had a bit more of a story. Um, that was good. I really loved that tension in the court about Hitler's lawyer
Uh-huh.
and like this
I,
can't be a monkey trial, or what did he call it? Not a monkey
like a
trial.
sham trial or something like that. I think he might have said monkey, but yeah. I definitely want to talk about that dynamic between those two because that was really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, and I think they did it. I think they did it really, really well.
mm-hmm.
I think those are the only major ones. And then Travis escapes. We don't even get to see like.
Right. So he was still alive. I mean, like
Yeah.
WTF.
Right.
So I was just about resolved to like having an unsatisfying death scene for him, and then all of a sudden he has like this like resurrection moment, and I was like, what?
Yeah.
uh if the show wasn't quite ruined already, it might have just did it.
Yeah.
So although there were some fun twists,
Oh, for sure.
at least he had a monster face now, so that's good.
Yeah. Yeah.
That guy had just too good looking of a body for nobody. Yeah.
Right.
Who gets away with looking like that?
Right. What the hell?
Yeah. So anyway, okay, yeah, no, that'd be fun. I think my main interests were along those lines and stuff. So I'll just make sure I don't talk too much. So speaking of existential, spiritual, eternal, transcendent realities, welcome to the Word and Journey podcast, late night edition, stories that shape us and make us think about death.
A lot. A lot.
A lot.
Especially in episode 7.
Welcome to the Word and Journey podcast. Conversations with friends about stories that shape us and make us think. And some stories that are just for fun. We're busy people reading books in realistic increments. Follow along in the book and join in the conversation. Or just sit back and enjoy. Our aim is to unpack the story and offer you things to ponder. Either way, thanks for being here. Spoiler alert, we picked a gory one, so
Yeah.
it is me and Jake. We're back. We are concluding our romp through the Amazon Prime show Hunters, which was only 2 seasons, and we have now finished season 2. So we are entering spoiler territory. If you haven't seen the show yet and you're interested in a conversation, you should watch the show. It's only like 16 episodes altogether. You could binge it in a weekend. You might have a very disturbed next 2 weeks, but you could do it. And then you can come listen to us. And we'll have a lot of fun. But anyway, thank you for joining me once again, Jake.
Yeah.
Always great. Always great to share stories and thoughts. And I was thinking about in the back of my head, and maybe we'll get to this point thinking, well, what's the value of this story? Should one watch this? Should we recommend this and everything? I don't know. But I for sure value what we do in that we are thinking about it. And it's become a thing for me as I mean, I love a good show as much as the next guy, and I kind of grew up on movies, so they form a legitimate like coping mechanism for me in some ways, and there's like a little bit of even like emotional attachment that goes with like movies and screens. So I feel like for me the growth point has been to not idly or passively consume a story, but to go through the discipline of I will have to make commentary on this and sound smart and profound, so I need to think about it and pay attention and pay attention more. And I think that makes me a better story watcher to know that I have to do that. And I don't know what your experience has been. I mean, I think you push that in me in that you also are super smart and bring super cool stuff. And so
I look and sound smart. I don't know that I actually am, but sure.
fair enough.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Like I take a lot of notes when I'm watching these, or like as I'm reading when we did our book podcast. Although I guess I did less note taking, more highlighting in that case, so that I was able to like find and remember passages. But I am definitely paying a little bit more closer attention. Like this series didn't have a ton of characters, like as far just the number, and that's what'll start to like I'll start to lose track of a lot of stuff if there's too many characters to keep track of. But there were a lot, like um especially bringing in Hava for a while, bringing in the oh gosh, he died such a tragic death, and I've already forgotten his name. One of Hava's
George.
George was great. Um, and stuff like that. Like those would have been characters and like a lot of the subplots that I would have just kind of not paid that much attention to. And so getting the like actually taking the notes and like really focusing on this to be able to talk about it and talk about the themes and um, just the general plot has been fun. And it's definitely a different way to consume media, at least.
Yeah. Yeah. So if y'all there are interested in becoming more active participants in your media, follow our show. We'll make sure that happens for you. So yeah, so here we are. Would you care to briefly narrate at least episode 7? Kind of felt so. We watched 2 episodes for this last episode, and they were markedly different from each other.
Oh yes.
So
Yeah, episode 7. So this was definitely I felt like a fish out of water. That's what it felt like a little bit. So it opens with Jonah. He's caught Hitler. He's marching Hitler out of the compound. And he starts telling this story. And it's a story about a man who told a story about a man who told a story about a house. And it opens in this. Oh, dang it. I just had the thought.
like this really idyllic countryside setting.
Idyllic countryside setting, and it's very much in the same sort of like shot in the same sort of style as the Grand Budapest Hotel. Um, like just a little bit of that, like oh gosh, and it's who's the I can't. I'm so bad at getting research and stuff done for all of this ahead of time. But anyways, it was like that same sort of like almost cinematography. Not quite as in your face about it, not quite as campy, but like there were definitely a few shots that were very reminiscent of it. Um, Wes Anderson, that's who I was thinking of. And so it opens with this old couple, and actually it's the older man who's just kind of telling this joke to no one. There's a rocking chair that's rocking, but like nobody's there, and there's a little bit of like almost breaking the fourth wall, but not really, that sort of stuff. And eventually you meet the wife, and it's again this sort of it's honestly to me it felt very Wes Anderson, like a couple of little shots of like she's carving up a duck in the kitchen, and 3 ducks actually, and this old man's telling this joke, and they start to play mousetrap. Um, and it's this kind of weird, awkward, stilted sort of whatever. And then 3 SS officers show up, and we find out that this old man is the like head architect for all of Nazi Germany, and he designed these like I think several prisons, but also like these grand halls and things like that. And these SS officers are looking for Jews hiding. And somebody at the market said that like, oh, this couple bought 3 ducks, and that's a lot of ducks for 2 people. Um, and this would also be back in the time where like ice boxes and freezers weren't as common in households. So there was that. And they start to go looking through, and it's still this very awkward sort of thing. And then the Nazis start to get murdered by the house, and you start to like you realize very soon that this couple is actually harboring a lot of Jews like inside of the walls, um, in the attic and in the floor, and like this house is a death trap to protect the Jews that
Like
are hiding inside
a
of the house.
gruesome death trap.
Oh God, it's awful. And so they kill the first three, and you start to see more of what's going on. You start to understand, and then another three show up looking for the first three, and I believe, let's see, I had my notes. Oh, and then I stopped kind of taking notes because it was this whole gruesome thing. But anyway, so the other three also end up getting murdered. Um, and then another set show up, and they end up killing the couple, not finding any of the Jews. So the one Nazi just wanted to like take the house, basically, and they were worried that like, well, they wouldn't be able to go back and say whatever. Oh, I'm sorry. There were only two sets of Nazis by this point. It gets a little bit confusing. And so, anyway, so like this couple that were hiding Jews away from Nazis dies, and the Jews kind of go after them and get revenge. Like this Nazi moves in with his family, they kill him, and then more Nazis come looking for them. This is the third party of Nazis, and eventually, like they start finding people. And Zev, we find out, is this child that has been like the main kind of person that you see hiding and moving stuff and like activating some traps and stuff. And he escapes with some of the children into the forest, and that's how we find like he's the ghost. And so it's this very like sort of otherworldly, again, like this entire series has had a number of different sort of cinematography themes. We saw a little bit of the Tarantino stuff up front in like the second episode of the first season, I think. We saw a lot of different styles and stuff, and that's been really cool. It's been really fun to watch. It's not felt super cohesive, but I don't think it's necessarily had to. Um, and so that's been fun. And then we find like at the very end of this episode, we see again Jonah marching Hitler out and into the lake, and Zev shows up with the boat, and they're off to finally put Hitler off or put Hitler up on trial.
Yeah, yeah. There's the story of episode 7. It was yeah. There is this kind of fragmented sense of style cinematography throughout the show, which kind of works. There's this like the mosaic feel to it, and this one I appreciated, and I kind of like it when series do this too, where they get to like, they're in the arc of the season, they're in rising action, and then for like the second to last or third to last episode, there's something that's just way different. They did. I really like the one that they did in the Battlestar Galactica reboot too, where I think it's like part one of like the 3-part conclusion or something. It's like or throughout there's like a whole bunch of backstory interspersed with it, like backstory that wasn't ever told up until the end. But like right at the end, they take this like dramatic pause to like a little bit more content and just like slow down and like and savor the ending and everything. So there's that feel to it, which I kind of appreciate. It's a little bit of a break in the momentum, but a worthwhile one. Yeah, I would agree with what you were saying earlier, though. It's so, I mean, because we'd had Zev, the character mentioned in Hava's retelling, and so we meet him as an adult for like a minute. So it did feel a little weird to have like a whole episode just to bring in this one character for a minute. But I mean, it's cool. I'm trying to think what the overall like benefit to the overall story was from this.
I don't know that it necessarily satisfied a story niche for me. I have seen this sort of like the penultimate episode is often in other series feels very different. Am I coming up with any examples right now? No, of course not. But like it's to have one of the episodes very near to the end of a series be just like this different view kind of breaks things up.
Yeah. Trying to think. I'm like replaying the episode and some of the gruesome scenes, and there's some really gruesome deaths.
Oh, yeah.
And I mean, that contrast of here's a super beautiful place. Here's these really kind, whimsical, amusing old people who are really capable of such grotesqueries, and then the kid too. I mean, the Zev character is like 10 when he, for the finale, he orchestrates the house into this grand death machine that can take out a whole squad of soldiers.
Yeah.
And he did that, and it's recognized by their characters, like, you did this, you built something beautiful. And I think that might be the theme that stands out a lot too, is the way it becomes an art. For Zev, he's commended for doing something beautiful and creating this killing machine, and for what's his name, Heinrich Hansum, he's the old guy, the architect. He's commended for building these death machines, and he'll say, we build these things not because we want to, but because we must. And I don't know. I guess I'm just noticing what gets called beautiful versus what isn't. Like, we can see that like the house. The house is beautiful. The countryside is beautiful. The kind of idyllic life rhythm that the old couple has together is beautiful. The Jewish people are beautiful. But then, like, all of that, like, kind of swallowing up these murders, and the whole reason that it exists in the first place is, in the midst of the Holocaust. And I don't know, it feels like it's kind of twisting the sense of like what beautiful is. Like, it's kind of like an ugly situation that this has to happen at all. And I mean, murdering is ugly and everything. Yeah, I have kind of an undeveloped thought here, but I don't know, what's your thought on like what is or isn't beautiful or good and true in this one?
Oh, yeah, we definitely see a juxtaposition of, beauty, these things called beauty that are really and like horrible things, like the death machines that Hansom, that's his name, creates. And so I don't know, it's this kind of almost beautifully oiled machine of death, that's, still protecting people, that was made to protect people, as opposed to, actually like slaughtering millions of Jews, right? So it's definitely this, I don't know, a beautifully crafted machine for awful things.
Yeah, maybe that's what I'm thinking about. Like everything having a purpose, or thinking about, here's these people created in the image of God, or here's this architect, he's been given this gift of architecture and design. Here's this boy, he's very clever, very precocious, able to do these things. And we could think, oh yeah, so having the gift and the ability, the power to build something, to design something, to devise like clever, crafty, interlocking things, like the Mousetrap game, which it was funny hearing you camp on that, and I was making a funny reference to you in VeggieTales,
Yes.
because finally we're playing Mousetrap. But there's this twisting that happens. So skills like Heinrich's, think of all the good that they could have been used for, and yet look what they had to be used for. And maybe just commentary on the corrupted nature of the world and the twistedness of which humans are capable. I know, maybe it doesn't go farther than that. Maybe just like, yeah, it's commentary and it's depiction. things are ugly. But anyway, but there were some good deaths.
Oh yeah,
the guy getting cut in half in the floor.
oh god, yeah, that was rough. And the Nazi that was on the toilet.
Oh yeah, that was just uncomfortable. So, but anyway, and then the house burned down. So the end. But yeah, so So anyway, so so that's episode 7. This interruption, kind of continuing this theme of, yeah, I mean, in this story, this whole series, it's kind of gruesome. Well, it's not all gruesome. It's a violent show. There's a lot of death, and there's kind of a way. I don't know that we could say death is glorified, but it's definitely happens a lot. Um, I'll have to think if I think that the show kind of more glorifies and more cheapens death, because it just, I mean, it happens so quick, so easy, and just like to everybody. And which I guess, I mean, thinking about like the theme of the Holocaust, I mean, it's kind of a thing there too. It's just like lots of people are dying and they're becoming nameless and faceless because there's so many of them, and it could be easy to lose track of the individual terror and horror of a single soul dying when there's just so many of them. And I know, in a entertaining sort of way, maybe the way that the show is structured with just gunshot after gunshot after gunshot after headshot after headshot, it just uh yeah, it kind of, you almost have to become numb to it to stay in the story. Which, I mean, I guess I did, because I mean, I stayed in the story and I enjoyed it. But now that I'm in this moment, as I'm talking about it, I'm wondering, I wonder if that's maybe not the healthiest thing for my soul. So, anyway, let the reader judge. Yes. So episode 8 then. So back to our current time story. So this is where we're back with our hunters. So there's been a passage of time, about 2 months, somewhere in there. They had Agent Millie, I guess, undisclosed story. They elected Agent Millie to be the one to, on her own, lead Hitler into town, out herself as one of the hunters. The others stay anonymous. A couple months go by. Again, undisclosed process, which is fine as a storytelling technique.
Sure.
But now we drop in, and now it's a grand trial. There's 5 justices from different countries, and Hitler's in a glass cage up on the stage, and we see it's courtroom drama. The people are represented by an African American Jewish male, and Hitler's represented, we find out, by another Jewish male. He's white as well, and the African American, the prosecuting attorney, his name's Oliver Frankel. Which, when they said Frankel, I was like, Victor Frankel, but no, I don't think they. I don't know if they made that nuance on purpose or not, or if they selected that name. I mean, probably, but I don't know. I'm not quite sure exactly what the connection was there. But anyway, so he's cast as, very vehement, very passionate, very, just dedicated to his cause. And Hitler's defense attorney, I think Benjamin Kramer or something like that, he's cast as very timid, very halting, like almost stuttering. And you almost get the sense he's like ashamed to be there doing what he's doing.
Oh yeah, there's like at the beginning of the trial, somebody calls him a traitor. Like,
yeah, and so so courtroom drama back and forth, and as one could expect, there's these infuriating arguments that get thrown back and forth. Frankel, he speaks from a lot of passion, kind of from this conviction of like, you are a monster, you did these things, and using really big purple language. Purple is a writing term for like extra flowery, extra extravagant. And Kramer, he doesn't say much, and he's like kind of halting in his speech, but he manages to say these pointed comments, or these questions that just manage to undermine the thing and to confuse the situation. And you get the sense that Hitler's kind of coaching him a little bit, and all of that. And so they go through the trial, and again, spoiler alert. So it does end up that they manage to convict Hitler, but it does look a little bit tenuous for a little bit. And then after that, so then there's they cram like one last action sequence into it, where Hitler tries to escape. where he like seems to fake a suicide or suicide attempts via cyanide pill, and then he's rescued. He's taken to the colonel and Travis, who, whoa, surprise, he didn't actually die after being shot in the face. He just has a nice big scar, and so I hope y'all heeded the spoiler warning because I'm just I'm just going for it. But yeah, so the doctor that rescued Hitler brings him to the colonel and Travis, and he says, "Hey, look at this!" Um, and then I forget what the colonel says, but she's dissatisfied with him in some way. So she shoots his rescuer, and then Travis comes up, and then the colonel is talking about again like how in order for her to ascend to carry on Hitler's legacy, he has to die, and blah blah blah. So she orders Travis to shoot him, but instead Travis shoots her and says something about like, well, this regime doesn't really acknowledge queens very well. So then he starts to make a deal with Hitler about being officially appointed his successor, and Hitler's not fighting him on that necessarily. So there's wondering of what might have happened. But then in the process of Travis helping him escape, then like our friends, the hunters, they come back in and they thwart everything. And again, there's like action sequence, and then after that, there's like the closing few minutes of like character resolution, which that's its own that's its own storytelling topic for later. But I think we wanted to really linger on the courtroom and some of the dynamics there. So do tell, what were some big observations for you?
I think the biggest one that's definitely in our face, like it's thrown up a few times, is this concept of like Hitler's lawyer. Like why should Hitler get such a defense? Why should Hitler get a competent lawyer? I guess is kind of what it comes down to, and like it's clear like the prosecution, Oliver Frankel, says at one point, the earth is round, the sky is blue, and Adolf Hitler is responsible for the murder of 11 million Jews, Romani, homosexuals, political dissidents, and goes on. Like this should be cut and dry. Why have this? And Hitler's lawyer, Benjamin Kramer, responds back, if we don't give him proper defense, won't we be like him? And it's this, we see this not juxtaposition, we see this tension of the letter and procedure of the law versus what we at least perceive to be justice and what we at least perceive to be right, because there is this whole tension. Like it's brought up at the very beginning of the trial that the one of the justices is he had ties to the Reich, and is he corrupt, is he not, we don't know, and it looks like he's making a lot of moves that would give Hitler an unfair advantage within the court and things like that. And things end up working out like you said, but it's this very like, we know that this person did such awful things, like that the evidence is plain for everybody to see. Like why should he get even the honor or the benefit of an actual trial? And I think like it's an interesting question to deal with, and it's a difficult one because we saw at the very beginning of this season when Millie kills off the fake priest, that fake priest got acquitted by a trial that like was supposedly going through all of these same sort of procedures and making sure that like all of our I's are dotted and T's are crossed, and that we're not falsely accusing somebody of something that they didn't do, which our legal system in reality here in the States has often done as well. Like there have been many stories, especially for people from marginalized communities, people from African American background, like being in prison for almost life, and then finally after decades getting a retrial and showing it was clearly wrong, like not even just a little bit of a technicality, but they were clearly falsely imprisoned. And so I liked it. I liked that tension a lot. I don't know, what did you think about it?
I liked the tension and the storytelling aspect of it. I was appreciating how they were bringing out what has been a recurring theme, I think, throughout the whole show, and especially through this series. Starting with Agent Millie, and well, in a sense, so I think in season one you would have seen Agent Millie versus Jonah on this philosophical debate, or Agent Millie versus Meyer in season one. Uh, how should justice be enacted? Should we trust in the offices that are appointed? And I mean, from an Orthodox perspective, we say these offices that are sacramental, even and appointed by God, whether or not we understand why. Um, but there's a way where the the legal authorities are appointed, or at least allowed,
Right.
for a reason. They're so there's spiritual significance to the government in that sense. But then on this other side, the side that would say, and yes, and though that may all be true, the government can be corrupt and individuals can be corrupt, and they're going to miss things, and we're going to have a very limited scope. And so sometimes justice, seemingly anyway, is not going to be served. So we should take it into our own hands. And there can be this sense of, well, I do what must be done. I do the hard things, that the vigilante approach. And so it kind of felt like these two attorneys kind of brought the same arguments in, where you kind of get the sense that Frankel is very much like, guys, come on, we should string him up right now. Whereas Kramer is very much the voice of conscience in a way.
Mm-hmm.
I really like what he said. He's talking to Frankel, and Kramer says, even Hitler has rights. If he doesn't have rights, then what are we? And it's getting to that question of identity. And Frankel will respond and says, well, do you want to be responsible for raising the next generation of neo-Nazis, of racists, of anti-Semites, mass murderers? If you put him on the stand, if you allow this, what will he be making of you? And Kramer responds, and if I don't, what will he be making of us? Which is kind of bringing out this question of what are we as people? We know the evils of which we're capable. I don't know if we always know the good that we're capable of either. Like, and I guess, I mean, in a sense, I mean, maybe this is a way of exploring some of what Jesus talks about too, when he says, even the tax collectors and Pharisees, love each other, pay each other's debts. Like, even like evil, corrupted people are nice to each other because they're in alignment, or they're on the same side. But to venture across that gap to say, you are my enemy. Can I be curious about you? Can I be present with you? Can I love you? Can I be kind to you? Like, there's something supernatural about that. It's really hard, really uncomfortable to do. Not a lot of people do it. When it is done, it's misunderstood. Definitely,
it can absolutely be.
Yeah, which I wouldn't go so far as to say the Kramer character is depicted as doing what he does out of compassion. If it kind of feels like he is, in a very roundabout way, also trying to defend the Jewish people in a sense.
It's, to me, it felt like a sense of duty. Like, this is the role. Like, if we look at the legal system, and this wasn't an American legal system, so there's some caveats, I guess. But if we look at it as a, where it's a bit Socratic, like you're having two arguments to try and find the truth, and truth, while I would argue, at least, there is absolute truth. Like, perception is subjective and storytelling is subjective, and you may say something with all of the intent in the world, but I may misinterpret it, misinterpret the intent, and we see that a lot within the courtroom as well. So in order to do this in the most fair and just way, which is, in theory at least, the most moral way, Kramer holds that particular office of just, I have to see, this is the role that I am given. I have to see this through to the end.
Yeah. Which is its own kind of heroism, really. That sense of duty, or that sense of, I've been given a role, I've been given a duty, and I'm going to live by my principles, even when they're misunderstood. that's pretty cool. It's pretty heroic.
Yeah.
So, and you kind of see this too, because there's a moment where Mindy testifies and
God,
just
yeah, I'm
gives,
glad we're talking about this.
I don't know, yeah, she gives this really moving speech, and there's some things about what she says in particular that I want to come to, but uh after she's done, then Frankel is the one that invites her up. After that's done, it's Kramer's turn to, he has the option of cross-examining her. He makes a choice. No, I'm not going to. And there's kind of a sense of like, yeah, that's right. And then Hitler from within his cage, he's like, nine, cross-examine, tell her, tell them, we were just moving them out of their country. She exaggerates. They lie. He wants to push it and to like tear her apart. And Hitler and his attorney have this back and forth where Hitler is going to say, threatening to fire him if he doesn't cross-examine, and Kramer's like, well, if you fire me, like nobody else is going to stand up. I'm like, you want to defend yourself? So but you kind of see in his own quiet, like shy sort of way, like he stands up for himself, and he stands that he's a decent human being in a really awkward situation. So
Yeah.
But okay, so speaking of Mindy's moment there, what stood out to you there?
Oh my gosh, the line, "I was just a person, we were just people, and you tried to make us extinct."
Yeah.
Like, and I know this show is being produced in the modern era when we're dealing. Sadly, this idea seems like something that we as humanity have not been able to escape yet. This idea that like the other, and that the other is somehow different or subhuman or whatever. I think we see that a lot today. Like there's a lot of, regardless of how you feel, or not you specifically, but how one feels about um, issues of like trans people, like they are just people. And we see so much violence being perpetrated, and that's just an example. That's a singular example of across many chains of violence that we see not only in the United States but across the world. And if we, it's so easy to simply forget that people are just people. They just want to live. By and large, like are there bad actors out in the world? Sure. Sorry, bad actors is a bit more of a engineering term talking about people that are actively choosing to do bad things, right? Not just terrible actors that don't know how to read scripts.
Although there's those two.
There are those two. But like, are there bad actors out in the world? Yes. And is where the line is, I don't honestly know that I can say, and that's why I'm not in things like law enforcement and in the court system. But again, we just it hit home, especially with a lot of the news that I've been hearing lately, like being, somebody who's within the queer community and trying to be somewhat active within the queer community. Like it's, it's something that's present, that's on my mind. Like um, we had a shooting in Colorado Springs not too long ago, and at a gay club, and it's Colorado Springs is very much like Spokane. Very much like Spokane as far as demographics go and things like that. And there's that question again of whatever. And I'm very lucky. I am, aside from being queer, I am in the majority of a lot of spaces. I have a lot of privilege, but I just see that over and over again, and I see that in marginalized communities over and over and over again. Like we allow ourselves to let somebody's humanity be lost, and we lose it in ourselves.
I'm glad you're emphasizing this, and it's you'd think it'd be something we'd learn after a while, but it feels like one of those points that, yeah, like, but it's one of those points that keeps needing to be made. People are people. People are on the image of God, and do they do foolish things? Sure. Do they do things that maybe even like defile the image of God? Sure, but that image is still there, and these people are still precious. And yeah, I mean, thinking about violence to trans people, to queer people, to people of color, to women, to children, to men, it happens. You know, sure. I mean, people do awful things. We can disagree with people, sure, and then that's fine. But there's no reason to be violent. There's no reason to hurt people, and there's
Right.
And again, like the better way, you know, what our Lord Jesus uh, demands of us is to love our enemies, or we could say to love the other, the person we just don't understand or don't agree with, or who might feel so very offensive to us in some way. You know, when you could think of it, so I'll get an IFS soapbox for a little bit, thinking thinking. So if I'm a system of parts and you're a system of parts, if I'm approaching you uh and something you do, and if if you and me are talking and there's a moment where I am offended or I'm hurt or I am bothered by something you did or said or something about you, what's really happening is I'm encountering a part of my own self. I'm encountering the part of myself that is bothered by this thing about you, or this part of myself that feels insecure because of something you said, or this part of myself that feels I need to judge or control or change you in some way. And you know, do maybe you need to change something? Maybe, but that's also your growth process, and that's kind of between you and God, you and your people. You know, my work is to recognize, okay, so what is a part of me that's not okay with you, or what is a part of me that's not at least just a little bit curious about? Okay, so why did you do that, or
Right.
what was the value of that for you, or how do I get closer to you? How do I understand you more in your wholeness? So it would be much better. Which I'm saying this now after, you know, I was having some family conflict earlier where I was not doing this so well, and very much just like hiding behind my defenses and like wanting people to come, you know, to do all of the work to approach me, and so I'm not the best example of this.
I don't think anyone is, but
no,
yeah.
yeah, but yeah, there's a different way that we could be with each other.
Mhm. Yeah. Do you ever find that, like, when you're bothered by something that somebody does, like my biggest realization for a lot of that came a few years ago. It's like I'm bothered by things in people that are the things that I see in myself that I don't like.
Often.
And it was just like this, it's so uncomfortable when you realize that. And there's a lot of growth too of, like, the things that I disliked in myself or dislike in myself even now. A lot of the times it's not worthy of being hated, I guess. Like it builds so much back into insecurities and, things that other people told me about myself that they didn't like and that I internalized and things like that. Um, like there's a certain level of awkwardness that I have that I've done a lot to kind of tamp down or whatever, especially when I was like in my teens, or trying to in my teens in my early 20s. And like anytime that there's a certain, and I don't even have the words to really define it. There's just a certain type of awkwardness that I'll see in somebody that's just like I like have to hold on to something. It is so tense in my body that I loathe being around it, but it's not their fault. And also, like, being awkward is okay. Like there is nothing really truly bad and inherently bad about being awkward. But like it's just builds so much tension in my body and I hate it. But yeah, what you were saying earlier too about, this whole reaching across the aisle with compassion with like Hitler's lawyer, and maybe it wasn't compassion with Hitler's lawyer, right? But seeing again, like even in the midst of all of this evil, even in the midst of all of this atrocity, um, we are at a base level. Hitler was a human. Like, does that mean that? And of course, it's all hypotheticals and stuff. Like, what if, if we take a lot of the not it's not just evangelical side, but like a lot of the salvation narratives are like, if you say the prayer and you're fine, at face value, and that's it. Like, what if Hitler accepted Jesus at the very last minute? What does that mean? I'm like, I don't know, and I'm glad that I'm not God. Like and we've talked about this in like the Great Divorce, and like there is something afterwards that doesn't, like, we're not necessarily just free and clear just because we said the little incantation, right? Um, but it's we have to wrestle with that. We have to wrestle with the understanding that, like, these And Hitler is a potentially a bad trope. Like I forget, there's some rule, or Godwin's law. I think that's what it's called. Like Godwin's law. Like any argument that happens on the internet, eventually somebody's going to call somebody else Hitler. But like we taking steps way further back into like normal everyday life, right? We have everybody in their life has somebody with whom they have a lot of conflict. Um, and being able to see that person as wholly and completely human, subject to the same imperfections that I am, and the same potential that I have. Like I have to be able to live within that tension, and yeah, again, I just really love the way the way that they did that. But going, it folds so much back into also what Mindy said. Like if we start seeing the others and the enemies as um, less than human or different than human or that different than us, then are we really that different?
Yeah, which again in the show is a theme that comes up.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Millie asks it, the Jonah character asks it, the sense of like, are we monsters? Like we're doing things like they did them. We're responding to we're responding to life with the same tools, the same actions that the Nazis use. So what separates us? You know, and can we say like context and ethnic origin and intent like really like amounts for a lot there? I mean, I'm sure that could be a factor, but then, but again, I mean, what if we took a different approach altogether? What if we did try to cross that aisle? And
Mm-hmm.
there is, speaking of the Mindy character, the other really beautiful thing that she says is like, you know, afterwards when she's done, uh, you know, she's just like, you know, weeping and holding it together. But you know, she says, you know, it's all done. He, Hitler, doesn't deserve any more of my breath or my thoughts or my words. And I was kind of taking that as her coming to the sense of, I'm done. Like I've been holding this burden in. I actually have gotten to say it to his face, and now I'm free to move on. I don't need to let him occupy space in my head anymore. So I wouldn't necessarily say she's achieved like forgiveness of him in that sense, in that I don't know that she would want to like alleviate him from punishment or like be nice to him, but there's some subversion of that where she's allowing herself to move on. She's managed to unburden herself in that moment, uh, with witnesses,
Mm-hmm.
in a really powerful way, and there was something really beautiful about that. Um, the other courtroom moment I want to hang on before we maybe explore the rest of the show. Um, so it's at the end. It You know, the verdict is delivered. Hitler's found guilty, sentenced to, you know, life in prison with no hope of parole. Cool. And I was really struck by the courtroom's reaction to that. You know, cheers, adulation, weeping, sobbing, just like the whole world, like collectively, like you know,
Mm-hmm.
letting that shuddering sigh of relief, just like this huge release of tension. And so, it said a couple of thoughts. I think so. One of my thoughts was, uh, me and the privileges that I walk in and the relative security of my life. I had this thought of, I don't know that I've experienced enough trauma to really fully appreciate what the show is
Sure.
or what that moment was. Um, there's just a lot of trauma categories I haven't experienced, and I mean, I've been hurt, I have my burdens, but not like that, not to that degree, to where I could be so fixated on, you know, extinguishing one person, and or I don't know, like the sense of like I saw my abuser brought to justice. Like I
Mm-hmm.
don't have that experience, and so there's and I don't have to have that experience in order to be with someone or to hopefully be a helpful presence. But there was something about that moment that was just like, wow, there is something sacred going on there, and I don't know exactly what it is. And in my life experience, I don't know that I can, but I do want to recognize that it is there.
Mm-hmm.
You know, what's your thought?
Oh yeah, I mean, I don't have anything nearly like you said in that same vein of trauma where like my whole people were so abused and utterly destroyed. But I do have those feelings of like just wanting to see. I hope that it's at very least just wanting to see justice be done against people who've abused me. Um, like we've talked on the show a number of times. Like I've dealt with a fair share of spiritual abuse, um, and there's a part of me that just I want to mete out justice, which I know isn't exactly great, and I can understand that and live within the tension. But to be able to see like some of these institutions even brought low, and hopefully not just for I hope that I'm imagining that and wanting it, not just for my own selfishness, but like to see justice done for others, and to see healing done for others, and for the institutions themselves. Um, so I can understand a lot of that, a lot of the cheering, and this would have been historical fiction and all. This would have been the culmination of such great deals of work and of pain and potentially healing. Like there's a lot of stuff that it's very difficult to heal from. I don't know if it's impossible, but very, very difficult to heal from until there is some form of, if not retribution, then resolution.
Yes, there. Yes, so think on that. I think it was at this last episode that I finally understood, I think, what this show is or how it's meant to be interpreted. Which, okay, you know, the writers and producers are welcome to disagree with me, obviously, because it's their work. But, so this consumer of the show um, now understands it as essentially a trauma exercise.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like you said, it's historical fiction. In linear time, so far as we know, the real Hitler was not caught. He was not brought to justice in this way. This trial never existed.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so, in a way, what the show is offering us is an imagining of the trial we should have gotten, or the courtroom experience we believe we should have had, uh, but couldn't. In certain approaches to trauma work and trauma healing, will do exercises like this where you might you and your full grown adult self and your full compassion, strength, courage, you in your mind you revisit a past memory, a time when like a younger you was vulnerable or in need of help or in need of an adult or something. And there's variations of maybe you as an adult you fight off an attacker, or you rescue a younger child, or you say the thing you needed to say, or in some way you kind of reauthor the inner narrative. And it's a little bit complex because again, it doesn't change linear time or doesn't change what actually happened, but it changes how you experience it, or it changes like the impact.
Mm-hmm.
And there is something really hugely freeing and powerful about being able to kind of reauthor the narrative in that sense. And so I'm now watching this show, and especially this last courtroom scene is kind of an expression of that, of like, we as the world, and certainly these specific people groups, never got to do this in real life. So then our artistic offering to them in honor of their suffering is just to say, here's a venue by which we might reimagine this story,
Yeah.
to have a witness now. Like, these are the horrors that happened. And yes, we're now talking to them. And now we're getting to kind of watch our anger be poured into like the object of that and everything. And so I don't know, understood in that sense, all of a sudden I feel like the show takes on like a different sort of significance and actually something really special in that sense. Um, Again, I mean, and it's operating very much not in the Christian framework, so it's not forgiveness oriented, and that would be the only thing more special.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. So I could see what was powerful about it, and maybe in a sense why we might say it's a little bit necessary. Necessary is a piece of literature um, to have out there, possibly.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a really interesting take.
Well, cool. Yeah. Um yeah, so courtroom, yes, and I'm glad I'm not a judge and have to carry that sort of burden because that would be complex. I yeah. As I was watching it though, I was very much expecting somebody to get shot. Be like, okay, one of these attorneys isn't gonna make it out alive. But they did, so that's cool. Or like the justices or something. Or like when I saw them setting up C4 and that's interspersed and all that, I thought, oh my goodness, they're gonna blow up the courtroom. But they blew up something else. So
Right. Yeah, they had a couple of good feints in this
yeah.
episode, and I feel like the whole series has done a decent job on some twists and feints and
Yeah.
unexpected character deaths that I'm still very mad about. Um,
Oh, Murray.
yeah, man. All
That
right.
one was hard. Yeah. For context, see season 1.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then in closing this, so so looking at just storytelling technique and characters in like the last 10 minutes of the show that like resolved or didn't resolve stuff, what were some of your thoughts on just like the ending?
Yeah, the epilogue was kind of nice. It's nice to see some of the loose ends wrapped up. There's, we got to see some of these characters being truly happy. Like Jonah finally marries Clara. Like she ends up seeing him in the hospital after he got shot, and then they, fast forward and they get married, and it's great. Um, we see Joe riding somewhere in the desert on his motorcycle with a big smile on his face. Lonnie gets his Oscar. Roxy seems happy with her kid. We don't get a whole lot of info about her. We see Millie and Harriet are now together and enjoying each other's company. And they like we end up seeing like pretty much all the characters, all of the hunters show up at the wedding, and it's like a nice little thing. The one thing that kills me, the one thing, and it kills me about the whole second season, is that we don't get to see a lot from Mindy. I think her character was pretty wasted in the second season, and it makes me really sad because she's
Mhm.
like my favorite. Um, but we do get to see her being a little bit happy at the wedding and like feeling unburdened. It seems like, so it's a nice little closing. There's part of me that almost wants like a longer epilogue to see, especially because like we close on a scene that's right after Harriet delivers proof to Jonah that the wolf slash Meyer was the one who killed Ruth, which was the whole beginning of the series. So it's this nice circular wrap up. It looks good, and then it's kind of like once a hunter, always a hunter. He says he's out of the game, and then lo and behold, like the final closing scene is him and Clara at this bar in Miami, and there's a guy speaking in German that's old enough to be a Nazi, and that's where it ends. Like it seems to be pretty clear that like Jonah didn't give up being a hunter. So I would have liked maybe a little bit more resolution, definitely more character development, like to see, especially of course Mindy, but like to see the others too. Like I could have seen a whole episode, and I see this a lot in a lot of anime actually. Like usually there's a full episode of true epilogue, which kind of the court season was like, and that would have been like if they had just killed Hitler off, like that would not have been nearly as satisfying. But I could have definitely done another episode of epilogue.
It felt like it kind of needed that, or to have been like maybe like an hour and a half episode or something, like some more there. Um, so yeah. So as far as like story endings, I don't know if this one would make top 10 for me because it just
Yeah, I don't know.
yeah, like yeah, I would agree. Mindy's character was kind of wasted, and she was perhaps one of the healthiest characters, and we could have benefited a lot from her. And um, I mean, it was nice that they kind of like at least touched on and acknowledged where all of the characters ended up, except for Travis, who again last we saw him, he was jumping off a building.
Oh yeah,
It
that's part
looks
of
too
epilogue.
high,
Yeah.
so I don't know. I guess yeah. And so what was the most compelling though was again the in the Jonah and Clara arc. So she comes back to him, they make up, they get married. She knows more about him now, so there's more of an informed consent. Okay, so uh she this last moment she's like I can see I can see Maya, I can see Ruth in you, and like I'm proud of you and everything. And so she's speaking of what she knows, and I think feeling secure in that she thinks she knows him, but she doesn't know he's still actively hunting.
Right.
So it's like the addict or the addicted person who like is still using in secret and still trying to keep secrets and hide things. And that was standing out again, thinking in the sense of like, well, who are we as people? And what separates us from monsters and everything. And I don't know, it's just interesting watching where the Jonah character goes to where, in a sense, like he doesn't really change, or he's caught this obsession bug too much,
Mm-hmm.
and now it's his family legacy. I mean, it's what his aunt did, is what his grandmother did, and now he's doing it, and it's he has become the Nazi hunter, and he's now jeopardizing his marriage still, right in front of her, and no telling where that will go. So, which again, as a very intriguing sort of like, oh, gut punch. I mean, well done, well written. As far as like a character role model, I was like, oh, dude, bad choice.
Very sad.
Yeah. So,
or maybe, I mean, it wasn't very clear. Like maybe she's on it too. Probably not.
Yeah, I didn't get that sense at all. Mm-hmm. I mean, that would have been cool. I mean, if they resurrected another season, I mean, that would. I mean, sure, that will be the central conflict or something. But
sure.
But also, it'd be a dead horse by then. So.
Oh yeah.
Yes, this is good. So, the moral of the story is, don't lie to your wife about hunting Nazis.
Yeah, that seems like a bad plan.
Yes. Or don't lie to your husband or boyfriend or girlfriend or whoever your significant person is. Well, just don't lie to them in general. That's just a bad idea. Okay. Well, I suppose we'll call that a wrap. And that's the Amazon Prime show Hunters, about Nazi hunters, in which we ponder justice and humanity and morality and what is the role of violence and who is real family and things like that. It's been fun.
It has. This has been a really fun series. I'm glad we caught up for the second season.
I'm glad we did too. Thank you so very much. And once again, as is our want, you are a very cool person, and I hope that others get to discover this as much as I have.
Very much the same.
Are there places on the web or other places where you can be found?
Not very many these days. You can look for my horridly languishing website that I'm debating about taking down, jacobrayschwartz.com, all one word, or Jacob Ray Schwartz on Insta. Feel free to look at random photos that I upload. It's a great time. Sadly, we have decided to close our podcast, Scotch and Socialism. So who knows? We might resurrect it later. We don't know. But yeah, that's about where you can find me.
Okay, sounds good. Is Scotch and Socialism still up, or
it is still up? Please feel free to listen to any of the episodes, but we have decided to cease recording.
All right. It was a good run. It was a good, fun, entertaining romp there. So, cool. All right. Well, thank you for joining us, folks. Please leave us rates and reviews and dollars at the Patreon. All that information will be in the liner notes. And we will be back sometime with other stories to make you think about stuff, think about your life, think about your death. And you will like it very much. You will. Yes, you will. All right, good night. Word and Journey is a podcast by Moses Bernabe. If you like what you hear, consider supporting the show with dollars, reviews, or shares, or all of the above. Word and Journey can be found on most major podcast platforms and on my author Patreon at patreon.com/Moses Bernabe. Moses Bernabe can be found at mosesbernabe.com. Contact info for my most excellent co-hosts can be found in the liner notes. The podcast logo was designed by TJ Todd, with additional development by Moses Bernabe. The theme music is by Aaron Esparza. Thanks for listening, and see you next time.